Hello and welcome back to MTGgorillas. Once again, we are back at Wizards of the Coast article about the 2021 Challenger decks, but this time not to look at all four, but to look at one in particular. What I think should be the best deck out of the four, or maybe even the most fun, the Dimir Rogues deck. Today we're going to go through a complete review of this deck. Unlike reviewing all four of the decks as I did in another video, this time I'm only going to review this one and go way deeper into it than I did last time. First of all, the first card I want to look at is the 4 Thieves' Guild Enforcer. This is arguably the best card in the deck. Not for being good per se, but for being very synergized. It's perhaps the best synergistic piece with the rogues. We have other rogue synergy with we have other rogue synergy with Soaring Thought Thief, but the main synergy in my point of view is Thieves' Guild Enforcer. It's a 1-mana 1/1 with flash. When it enters the battlefield or another rogue enters the battlefield under your control, each opponent mills 2 cards. I would be really happy with this card, even if it didn't have the other ability of, as long as an opponent has 8 or more cards in their graveyard, Thieves' Guild Enforcer gets +2/+1 and has Death Touch. This card is really good in this deck because it mills cards from your opponent's graveyards. There's really 2 ways to win here. You have the win cons of your big creatures like Vanquish Gargoyle and Zerasong the Trickster, but most of the time you're going to end up winning by milling your opponents out. And Thieves' Guild Enforcer is probably the way you're going to do it. It mills 2 cards whenever you play a rogue or Thieves' Guild Enforcer, which means that if you already have a Thieves' Guild Enforcer on the battlefield and you play another one, you're going to end up milling 4 cards, which is really good for only 1 black mana, especially since you also get the body of a 1/1 that's going to turn into a 2/1 pretty soon, since by then you already automatically have 6 cards in your opponent's graveyard. The next one is Rankle, Master of Pranks. This is a really good card. It's pretty expensive, and I'm happy to see it in the deck, except it doesn't have any synergy, except for the fact that it's a rogue. It's a 2 block and 2 generic 3/3 legendary fairy rogue with flying and haste. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, choose any number. Each player discards a card. Each player loses 1 life and draws a card. Each player sacks a creature. This is pretty good. Yes, it's actually very good, but it's not very synergistic. A way they could have made this more synergized with the rest of the deck is if somehow they put more graveyard recursion in the deck, because here we have the third mode is each player sacks a creature. This would actually not be too bad with Thieves' Guild Enforcer if you could somehow bring Thieves' Guild Enforcer back. If you already have 1 Thieves' Guild Enforcer on the battlefield, well, actually no, if you already have 2 on the battlefield and you sack 1 and somehow manage to bring it back, that's another 4 cards you're milling from your opponent's graveyard just by doing combat damage with Rankle. Right now, really the only graveyard recursion we have here is actually it's the one where, okay, here we go. Malakir Rebirth. It's not actually graveyard recursion, but what it does is that you lose 2 life until end of turn that creature gains when, or you have to choose a creature, until end of turn that creature gains when this creature dies, return it to the battlefield tapped under its owner's control. What this would do is, okay, first you deal combat damage with Rankle, Master of Pranks, which isn't that hard since she has flying, and then you choose each player sacks a creature. You can choose the others too if it benefits you. And then, but before that goes through, when the ability is still on the stack, play Malakir Rebirth, choosing 1 of your Thieves' Guild Enforcer. This only works if you have 2 or more. And then, okay, you lose 2 life. That's fine. Until end of turn, that creature gains when this creature dies, returns to the battlefield tapped under its owner's control. So then it dies when you sack it, meaning that, but it's not just you sacking something, it's also your opponent sacking something, which is pretty good because then you're sacking something, bringing it back, while your opponent just has to sack something. Really good against Voltron decks, I guess. And then, so when you bring Thieves' Guild Enforcer back, you mill 4 more cards. It's a little combo, not that good, but it's good in standard, I guess, because you're not going to be seeing much other combos that are better than those. So we went over Rankle and Thieves' Guild Enforcer and the Malakir Rebirth. And by the way, the other side is a land that enters tapped. It only taps for black. Yeah. So yeah. The land is called Malakir Mire. It's just an uncommon land that enters the battlefield tapped and taps for black. More of the time, you're probably going to be playing Malakir Rebirth, though. There's other uses for it, to save one of your big creatures, maybe even to save Rankle herself, or Zero the Sun. Okay. Black Bloom Rogue. It's 3 mana for a 2/3 menace. It gets +3/+0 as long as an opponent has 8 or more cards in their graveyard. This card isn't that good, actually. 3 mana 2/3 menace is fine, but a lot of the times it is going to get +3/+0. So a lot of the times it's going to be a 3 mana 5/3 with menace. A 3 mana 5/3 with menace is pretty sweet, but it's nothing to brag about, not really. So it's okay in the deck for if you're gonna use this in Friday Night Magic or just casual standard, but I wouldn't bring it to tournaments because it's not really a competitive card. And the other side is this same as Malakir Rebirth, same type of card, but it's a different name. Vantress Gargoyle. It's this card is pretty good. It's 1 blue, 1 generic for a 5/4 artifact creature. It's a Gargoyle. Don't get too excited though, because it can't attack or block unless you meet its conditions. Its conditions are whenever it can't attack unless defending player has 7 or more cards in their graveyard, which isn't that hard, but the harder one is that Vantress Gargoyle can't block unless you have 4 or more cards in your hand. So a lot of times you're not going to be able to block because you have some pretty cheap stuff in here, like 4 Merfolk Windrobber, 4 Soaring Thought Thief, 4 Thieves' Guild Enforcer, all cheap stuff in terms of mana. So a lot of times your hand's not going to be that full, so a lot of times this can't block. It does help you, however, get 7 or more cards in your opponent's graveyard because if you tap it, you can mill one of your cards in the opponent's library. Also, it has flying. It's a good card in the deck. I wouldn't take it out when upgrading, but I wouldn't take out all 3 when upgrading. Maybe cut it down to 2. I would probably not put another one in because the thing with this one is it only mills 1 card when you tap it. Yeah, fine. It's not going to really do anything else if you can't attack or block, but still, 1 card is nothing to brag about. Okay, 3 Nighthawk Scavenger. These cards are good. Nighthawk Scavenger is 2 black and 1 generic for a 1+ star. Flying Death Touch Lifelink. Its power is equal to 1 plus the number of card types among cards in your opponent's graveyards. That's pretty good. It's a good card because there's gonna be a lot of card types in your opponent's graveyard. Unless you're playing someone who has that companion that makes it so that you can only have 1 card type that's not lands. Anyway, it's a good card because a lot of times you're probably going to have it as a 4/3 for 3 mana, Flying Death Touch Lifelink, which is pretty good. It's solid, and it's a rogue, so it would trigger Thieves' Guild Enforcer. I wouldn't take these out. Zerathon the Trickster, probably the best, probably one of the best cards in the deck. This is a lot of writing on this card. It's a 5 mana 4/4 flash, but for 4 mana, instead you can return an unblocked attacking rogue you control to its owner's hand, and put Zerathon the Trickster from your hand onto the battlefield tapped and attacking. This is good when you're attacking with a little creature like Merfolk Windrobber, because then instead all of a sudden you're doing 4 damage instead of 1. And what might be even better is when Zerathon does combat damage to a player, you can put a permanent card from that player's graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. This is really good if you're playing against like a Stompy deck, which is going to be in the metagame now that the Mono Green Stompy deck came out in 2021. You see the Mono Green Stompy deck right here, but I don't want to go over that one. This video is about the Dimir Rogue deck. So this is good against a lot of players who have big creatures and expensive cards. And so you basically get something for free out of the opponent's graveyard. Um, what I don't really like about this card is that it doesn't really mill anything. It doesn't mill any cards. So you're going to have milled a lot beforehand, probably with Thieves' Guild Enforcer, which I keep on going back to because it really is the best card in the deck. Okay, Merfolk Wind Robber. I would keep these in unless you have like a huge budget and you're turning this into, I don't know, modern or legacy, even vintage maybe, but I don't think this would do any good in vintage. And this is great to keep in if you're going to keep the deck in standard. Whenever it does combat damage to a player, that player mills a card. So that's just a little bit of milling, and I think it's really not supposed to stick around for that long, especially since it has a sack ability to draw a card. It's really easy to meet its conditions, 8 or more cards in their graveyard. A lot of the cards in this deck are only fully turned on when your opponent has 8 or more cards in their graveyard. And this one's going to be pretty easy to sack it and draw a card. It's pretty cool that I can mill a card whenever does combat damage to your player. Just all around, it's a solid card that comes out early in the game. It can do a little bit of damage. Nothing to brag about, and it's a good blocker, I guess, since you could sack it at instant speed. Finally, for the creatures, Soaring's Thought Thief. Ooh, try saying that 3 times fast. 2 mana, 1/3, flash, flying. As long as an opponent has 8 or more cards in their graveyard, rogues you control get +1/+0. Pretty cool because it doesn't only give Soaring Thought Thief +1/+0, but all your rogues. And pretty much all your creatures are rogues except for Vantress Gargoyle, which I would still keep in because you don't need that many rogues. I mean, you don't need much more rogues, and it's a good card. So it also has whenever 1 or more rogues you control attack, each opponent mills 2 cards, effectively making it so that whenever you go to combat and actually attack with something, you're gonna mill 2 cards, except when you're only attacking with Vantress Gargoyle. So 2 sorceries, and those 2 are both Bloodchief's Thirst. It's a good removal spell. Destroy target creature or planeswalker with converting mana cost 2 or less. If the spell was kicked, instead destroy target creature or planeswalker. And you can kick it for 3 mana. It's solid. You should keep it in unless you have better removal. I guess it's okay. It's pretty hard. It's pretty costly to kick it, 4 mana to destroy something, but it works. And if we're in a tight spot, and that's why they only put in 2. Probably 4 would be way too much. 3 would be a bit too much. 1 might be too little. You're not going to be drawing into it that often. I already went over Malakir Rebirth, so we're gonna skip right into Drown in the Loch. This is a really good card for the deck. So basically you can counter something with converting mana cost less than or equal to the number of cards in its controller graveyard, or you can destroy something with converting mana cost less or equal to the amount of cards in its controller's graveyard. It's really good because you're going to have a lot of cards in your opponent's graveyard, so you can pretty much counter if you're in the late game, you can pretty much counter anything or destroy anything for only 2 mana, which is really nice. 2 Eliminate, great card. Not much to say about it, though. It's just destroy something with converted mana cost 3 or less. Has to be a creature or planeswalker. Keep it in. Why not? You need some removal. 2 Heartless Acts. 2 mana, destroy target creature with no counters on it, or remove 3 counters from target creature. It's good. You're not going to... Most creatures don't have counters on it anyway, so it's going to be pretty easy to destroy the creatures with no counter. And it's 2 mana removal, which is nice. Keep it in. 4 Temple of Deceit. No, it's really good. It's a Scryland. They're all rare. You got a whole playset of them. There's nothing wrong with it. I actually like it being in there. 8 Islands, 9 Swamps. Nothing to say there. 4 Dismal Blackwater. Well, life gain tap lands aren't that good, so I wouldn't say that this is a good addition to the deck. You're not going to be. I mean, I guess it is okay since you get the 2 color lands, but it's fine to just keep in 4 Temple of Deceit and not the 4 Dismal Backwater. Anyway, thank you for watching this video.